All right, what's up, guys? We have a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into it. To begin with, we are starting Unit 3 because we're starting the third paper. Your second paper was due just this past Friday, right? And like I like to do with every new unit, every new paper, we're going to start at course 10. You want to move to argumentative synthesis if you have not sort of done that, at least mentally already. Again, it's set up the same way as all of our other units. You got your prompts up here along with your rubric for this paper. You have videos. I'm currently recording the first one, so that will be there by the time you see this for obvious reasons. And then under that, you have your homework in chronological order. To begin with, back to those prompts. This is our paper, argumentative synthesis. More on that in a moment. You will have some annotated bibs for this paper. We will talk about it after we talk about the prompt. And yeah, let's get into it. So, to begin with, well, I thought I was set up. All right, an argumentative synthesis. This is essentially a research paper, okay? Let's go over some of the finer points first. Length 3 to 4 pages, 30% of your total grade. So it is significant. Of course, we will spend a significant amount of time on it. Yeah, format, same as always. I hope at this point there are no surprises there. Source text, up to you, pending approval. More on that in a second. And it will be due April 8th. We are not, at least at the time of this recording, even technically into March yet. So as I said, you will have a significant amount of time to get this paper in the best possible shape it can be. Of course, we'll have spring break in there somewhere, so we'll have to contend with that. But what is the paper? Well, as always, I have a lot of words here that I think can be helpful, but I'm not going to read at you, okay? So you can go look at this or you can pause the video and read it now. That's all up to you, but I try to just sum it up for you. What this assignment is basically, and there's going to be two ways to take this, but essentially we have spent this semester up to this point talking about social media, its effects on us, how we use it, for good and ill, and just, I mean, honestly, the reason I like talking about it in this class, number one, we I think really take it for granted, right? Like especially you guys, you grew up with it. Um, it sort of rose to prominence when I was younger, so I remember a world without it. But either way, it's such a big part of our world now that I think sometimes we just assume it's always been there, kind of, right? But that's not true. And because of that, not only does it have these wide sort of reaching effects on us, but also I think sometimes we don't even see them, right? So what I want you to do in this assignment, you're going to pick a text, and I have an example for you to help spell this out. You're going to pick a text. It could be one of two things. Either, and this one usually tends to be the more popular, either you pick somebody who really screwed up on social media, okay? That's the best way I know to put it. They really screwed up on social media. How did they do that? But that would be like your summary of the text, right? And then the rest of your paper would be really focused on what was the reaction to that screw up. And your argument would be, well, what does it say about us as a people, a society, a culture that we react that way? Okay. The other way you can take this assignment, and some people will do this, it's just not as popular. You can also, within reason, focus on like a movement. So one of the more prominent ones is like Black Lives Matter. Now the key there would be you could not really talk about the movement as a whole. You only have 3 to 4 pages. I know some of you feel like that's a lot. It's not. And also, a movement like that is huge. If you try to talk about that in 3 to 4 pages, you would basically just end up writing me a book report, right? It'd be a lot of summary. That's not what we're doing. So even if you chose that route and you went with some kind of a movement, Black Lives Matter, for example, you would need to focus on a particular person, like a prominent figure within that movement, or a particular event, like a famous sort of event on social media that's part of that movement, and you can talk about that. That will focus. Um, sort of the information that you have to deal with, and that will allow for much more room for argument, which is really what we're trying to do. I have some questions down here to think about, and again, this is all just meant to get you started. Why did this person or their associated movement gain such popularity? How did it happen? Do their actions somehow take advantage of us, our predilections? Why do people keep coming back to these folks? What are our priorities if these people get celebrated for maybe doing these things sometimes? And then I have a note down here. This is important. What we won't do is write a reclamation project. So oh, thanks Microsoft. I've only ever had this happen a handful of times, but occasionally somebody, and I get why, but somebody will write about or try to write about, because I don't let you, will try to write about a particular person. One example I could think of is like Roseanne Barr, okay? You guys may or may not remember who that is. She was very famous when I was a kid, but her show came back. It was called Roseanne, so it's pretty easy to remember. And it was doing really well, apparently. I don't watch TV, so. And then she tweeted some super unfortunate things. It's pretty like super racist stuff. And then of course people, like they always do, went into her Twitter and found all kinds of other really screwed up stuff. She apologized for it. She blamed Ambien. Um, and that, to be totally honest with you, with what I know of Ambien, is kind of a good excuse, but also not, because again, she said really messed up stuff. Anyway, the point of that story is she got kicked off the show. She was pretty pissed about that. I'll have students who pick a person like that, and again, they're probably a fan, and then they want to write a paper about why this person should be, their career should be like resuscitated or whatever. The reason I don't want you doing that is because that's not what the assignment is. Okay. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is maybe a word of caution. If you end up, and we're going to have time to pick a text, you don't have to do it today, okay? But if you end up picking someone or something that you're a huge fan of, that's okay. But understand one of the risks there is you might even unconsciously be picking that person or that movement, whatever it is, because you're a really big fan of it and you really want to talk about it. The problem with that is you're going to give me a lot of summary, and you may even give me an argument that we're not after in this paper. So it's something to think about. Now, again, you may not totally understand quite what we're trying to do in this paper. As I said a couple minutes ago, I'm going to give you guys an example here in a second. I just want to get the prompt out of the way. And then, of course, as always, if you have questions, you can hit me up, but that's our prompt. Now, there is a research component to this paper, and that's what these bibs are for. Sorry about that. Annotated bib. You're going to have 4 entries, and it says right here each entry should be at least 500 words. Honestly, that's a ballpark. I had an enterprising student a couple semesters ago point out to me, because I have a sample bib down here for you that I wrote, that my sample bib is not 500 words. It's like 480 or something like that. So I'll put it like this. If your bib looks a whole lot like mine and does the work that mine does, I'm cool with it not quite being 500 words, okay? We'll just get that out of the way, all you crazy people that want to count words. Sorry. Format, MLA, I mean, again, even that, it doesn't have to be double spaced. The rest of it should probably be MLA, for reasons that I'll cover in a second. As I said, there are 4 entries. Your first 2 entries will be due the 10th of March, and I am notoriously bad with dates. What is that? That's next Thursday, okay? So you got some time on this. The last 2 entries will be due that next week on the 15th. A note, you will not write a bib entry for your primary text. So I'll go ahead and explain what this means. In the example I'm going to give you, it's going to be about a guy, a football player, who sent a tweet he ought not have, and people basically let him know that. What you're not going to do, because there's really just no point, is try to write an entire bib entry on that tweet in this case, right? It wouldn't work for how we're doing this. What you can and should do, and again, we'll talk about this in more detail in just a moment, is write your bib entries on the research that you do. And if that article or whatever you find happens to showcase that tweet or talk about it or whatever, then that's fine. You can bring it up in your bib for sure. But it'd be, in other words, it'd be real hard to squeeze 500 words out of whatever the character count is now. So yeah, don't do that. What the assignment is, this is each entry, okay? Complete MLA citation. Summarize the information in the article, 3 to 4 sentences. Once you've summarized it, I want you to spend a couple sentences thinking about how you might use the article, like for what purpose. Are there any kind of arguments or really interesting information in the article that you think you could make use of? And then finally, 2 quotations from the article, cited and integrated according to MLA. And again, a few thoughts about that quotation, each one, and how you might use it in the paper. Now, I understand, again, all of that can be kind of hard to picture, which is why I've written a sample bib for you. Now, this one is about just a really cool article I found one day about professional wrestling. But let's talk about those steps. Let's break them down. To begin with, each bib, oh, come on now, work with me. Each bib would start, Christ, there we go, with an MLA entry for your works cited page. Looks just like that. The reason I'm having you do all this, by the way, these bibs are for you. Like, I understand they're homework, but they're notes. By the end of this, you're going to have 4 articles, 3 of which at least you have to use in your paper, that you can refer to. It's going to be so much easier for you to sit down, think about, write a paper, just organize information if you have one of these to represent an article as opposed to an entire article itself, right? And along with that, each article for each entry, you're going to have your works cited entry right here at the top. You can just copy and paste that guy, right? He's already done for you. Here, the first half of this paragraph is my summary of the article that I read. And the second half of this paragraph is kind of how I think I might talk about it, use it, what are some interesting ideas that I could build off of. Again, by the end of this, you'll have 4 articles that you could use in your paper. You may not remember what you read, or you may have trouble differentiating between some of them, right? Because they're going to cover similar content. So here again, this is much quicker. This like little summary of the article, I can read that and go, oh yeah, that's what this one is about. This is for you. This is to help you out. Last but not least, the quotations down here. Here's the first one in this sort of mini paragraph, and then the second one in its own little paragraph. You'll notice, let me see. Oh, God, it's not going to work with me, is it? You'll notice, if I can, okay. The quotation is integrated into a sentence and cited. What this means, again, if I want to, I could probably just copy and paste this into a paper. That part's done. And again, I have some thoughts here about it that I could use to think about. But you're basically kind of starting little parts of your paper ahead of time. This is to help you, again, organize that information, especially at some point in this process. I know I mentioned this already. We're going to go away to spring break. You would be surprised the amount of things you can forget over the course of a week. So we're going to have this ready to go for you when you get back, so you're not entirely lost. And I say that to say there are students every semester who just don't bother with the bibs at all. Easily, the students who do the bibs and take them seriously tend to do much better than the students who don't. I'm just being upfront with you. I would very much consider spending some time on these. These are meant for you. These are to help you. Okay. Let's talk about this. So the sample text, I guess, I'm going to give you guys if I were writing this paper, right? That's how I always like to think about it in classes like this. What would I do? Well, look, you and I, we probably live in very different worlds. I'm a fan of professional football as well as college, but we don't run in the same circles. Like, I'm trying to think of some texts students have used in the past. I had students write about, oh, what's his name? Some YouTuber makeup guy. Oh God. I mean, again, I'm not going to be able to summon. Some of you right now know exactly who I'm talking about. But again, the point I'm making is we swim in different circles. Okay, I'm just not up on the YouTube makeup game. That's just Charles James, something like that. I don't know the order of the names, but I think those are those. Those are right. Um, People have written about that guy. People have written about Britney Spears. I've had a lot of people write about Kanye West. Um, and again, like take Kanye West as an example. That's a guy who, I mean, unfortunately, you could pick any number of tweets that guy sends out as like problematic or as eliciting negative feedback, right? For sure, for sure. And look, some of it justified, for sure. Um, but those papers, to maybe give an example you guys know a little bit more about when you think about Kanye West, those papers only spent a little bit of time looking at sort of what he had done because the bulk of the time, again, needs to be focused on, well, how do people respond to that and what does that response say about us? So let's dig into this. This guy, his name is Carlton Davis. This is from a couple years ago. Actually, you have a date right there. Is it only 2021? I thought it was. Man, it feels like a longer time ago. That's how time works now, isn't it? Anyway, Carlton Davis, really good cornerback, plays for the Buccaneers. He has a Super Bowl ring. Very young guy. He was drafted, it says somewhere in this article, I think in like 2018, something like that. So, um, as of last year, he's in his early 20s. He's probably a couple years older than most of you guys, right? Much closer in age to you than me. Why do I bring any of that up? Well, let's go ahead. You can see it there, but let's go ahead and go to the tweet that sparked the outrage here. Got to stop letting, and this is blurred out, in Miami. So obviously already, and I tried to find a version of it without this, but it was very difficult to find. What I usually, I don't know why I can't talk. Can I click on it? Will it do anything? It will not. What I usually do is bring this up in class and I'll ask students, what's the problematic word in this tweet? And all of you will point to this word, even when it's not blurred out, because you know the rest of these. It's not Miami. Nobody has a problem with Miami as a word. The word he uses is gooks, by the way. Now, some of you know that that's not an okay word. But a lot of you, and this always surprises the students who know that it's not a great word to use, a lot of you don't. And by the way, I happen to think there's a good reason for that, but let's cover this for a moment. He tweets this, got to stop letting those people in Miami, where he's from. And the internet, according to this article, doesn't take kindly to that. And here's why. This is the sort of the information we need. Highly offensive term contained in the post used toward those of Asian descent, specifically Vietnamese. Specifically Vietnamese, really. I mean, I guess since then it may be more broadly applied to Filipino and Korean people. So the internet, of course, doesn't take kindly to that. They let him know about it. Down here, he tweets after that, and they had a screenshot. Oh, here we go. So he tweets an apology, right? I'd never offend a group of people. He talks about reporters. He explains why he used the term, directed toward a guy who said a dumb thing in his opinion. He says he won't use the word anymore. Then he cites, he basically is saying that where he grew up, which is Miami, it was a slang term for someone who sucks, right? Down here he says, he explains that as well. He didn't realize it meant this other thing. He knows that now, and he. Wait, there it went. Did I fix it? Okay, sorry about that. So as of right now, man, is this gonna play games with me now. All right, I got to use the touchpad. This is going to be brutal. Sorry. Anyway, to be clear, this is our primary text. This stuff is context, especially because people don't take kindly to this either. Now, of course, one of my favorite responses to sum up the reaction to this initial tweet is that this guy is racist, right? Because that is a racist term. It is. He then says down here, he didn't know that, right? One of my favorite responses to his apology is, and I tried to find it, but there's so many. I mean, it's Twitter, right? There's so many responses. One guy said, "You should have known. There's no excuse." And my immediate thought was, that's such an insane argument to use, right? There's no excuse. Like, understand we live in a society, like if you are defending yourself, you can murder somebody, right? And I think most of us would agree that that's fine. But we're saying, as a society, there is an excuse for murder. There is. But there's no excuse for using a word. That's bananas. Especially when you read his excuse. If you don't know, and look, I feel like you got to give the guy the benefit of the doubt here. If you legit don't know, how could you know? Do you catch? Do you see my point? Like, it's so unfair to basically crucify this kid. I mean, you guys may not like that term, but he's like 22, 21, whatever. When he says this, he's a kid. He says he doesn't know. I believe him. And again, this is a little more prescient in class when I ask you guys if you know what that word means, because many of you do not. He's around your age when he says this. He doesn't know. That's fair. And again, I love his response because he immediately just says, "I'm not going to use that word anymore. I didn't know. Now I do. I'm not going to use it." That, to me, and again, I'm trying to be very clear about our paper here. To me, what you cannot do, unfortunately, is what I'm about to do, which is say, I feel like that's a pretty valid response. Like that, we are watching in real time a guy learn a thing, right? He made a mistake, unintentionally. I'll say this: I think if he knew it was a racist term, he wouldn't have tweeted it. But anyway, we see him make a mistake. We see him learn, apologize, and say, "Okay, I'll do better next time." That feels like progress to me. Twitter, by and large, did not react that way. So much so. Let me see if I can find it down here. We're talking about Asian American hate after that, hate crimes. They're wondering down here if, at least I think it's this. I've been through a bunch of articles. Oh wait, it's down here. Both the NFL and the Bucks, the team he plays for, have been approached for comment. Whether any further action will be taken against this guy. And again, it's like when they use language like further action, they're saying, is he going to be fined? Is he going to be suspended? That's real stuff. That's real stuff to do to a guy who, again, I would argue, and this isn't quite what we're doing in the paper, but I can't help myself. I would argue everything that needed to take place has taken place. He knows now. If he ran around still using the word, that would be different, right? But I think we're good. I think we solved it. We helped a guy learn a thing, and now he knows. We could move on. Here's where our argument steps in, okay? Again, and I'm not going to go swimming through the cesspool that is Twitter to find this for this video, but the way most people reacted to this apology was some version of "there's no excuse" and or "you should have known better." What does that reaction, which was the bulk of the reaction, say about us as a people, a society, a culture? We gotta meditate on this for a second, and also I gotta drink something. I'm sorry. Well, let's think about it. I've had students in the past give me some really good arguments about this, and they're worth thinking about it. So initially, like, look, let's try to be fair to the people who react sort of so vehemently to this guy and what he tweeted, right? Why are they acting that way? There's a couple possibilities, actually. One of the sunnier possibilities is they see, oh yeah, I keep grabbing my mouse like it works. Sorry. Is they see that word and they know what it means to react the way that they do, right? And they attach it to that guy and just immediately kind of they immediately associate all the racist connotations and I mean denotations of that word actually with that guy. So what does that mean? Well, it means he's a fucking racist, right? That's what it means to those people. So they react accordingly. Well, what does that tell us about that reaction? It tells us we live in a time and place here in, I mean, this occurred in 2021, so, a year ago. We live in a time and place where the public outcry against racism will be strong and swift, right? Like, we're not saying we've solved it, we're not saying it's disappeared, but we are saying, again, as a society, by and large, we try to squash it, we try to do what we think is the right thing, any version of that, for sure. But I think that's only half the argument because, again, especially once you read his apology and his explanation, I think at the very least, if we were fair to the kid, we would sort of think more about that original position, right? But people, again, by and large, do not. So, what does that say? Well, I think two things can be true at the same time. Namely, number one, again, we try to squash this like racist rhetoric and the thoughts associated with it for sure. But I think the rest of that argument would run something like, but we're so quick to do that, or we're so adamant in doing that, that maybe sometimes we sort of step on people that don't deserve it, or we're to put that another way, we're in such a rush to correct this racist rhetoric to make sure that we stop people from sort of espousing those views that sometimes we don't actually stop and listen to somebody who does not know, right? Because again, I think the best case scenario would be this could be like a learning moment, but most people don't view it that way. You're not really educating somebody when you're condemning them, right? You're just trying to shut them down. That's a different thing. That would be one argument. Other arguments I've had in the past when I've sort of shown people this guy, um, some people were of a mind that you know, I mean, far be it from me to judge people on Twitter, but some people were of a mind that a lot of folks on Twitter react the way that they do. I don't know. We have the phrase like virtue signaling. That's possible that a lot of the people are reacting as vehemently as they are because they want to make sure to show all their friends and anyone else that they're better than this guy, that they would never use that word, that they know what's right, and it's just like they're basically using his screw up as a stepping stone to make themselves look better. So they're capitalizing upon this guy's mistake. That's a little icky. That's also an argument, right? Um, there are other ones that are a little more nuanced than that. But the point I'm trying to make to you here is what you would do, and again, you would need more articles than just this one. But what you would do, this would probably be one of my articles because I feel like actually this does a really good job of just breaking down the whole saga. We get his original tweet, we get his follow up tweet, and I tried to go find it, and it was actually really difficult. Honestly, I think because my theory is people have since taken articles down because it had that word in it. Like so they're kind of censoring the story, which is interesting. Um, but you can go look for this guy. I'll show you how I found the original. I just remembered his name. That's an earlier search that I tried, and I just went Carlton Davis tweet. Easy. That's actually the article we're looking at. It's the very first one. Excellent. I should point out you can and probably should use Google for this assignment. We're talking about social media, Twitter in this case. What better place to go than something like Google? But a lot of these were similar. Um, here's actually, I sincerely doubt, yeah, it's not going to still be up. Um, obviously, he would have deleted that. But there's different articles through here. A lot of them are super similar. What I tried to find, and I didn't have time before I posted the video, there were a lot of, last semester, there were a lot of articles about the reaction itself. And this is where I found like the tweets about the people saying like there's no excuse, anything, stuff like that. That would be another article where now I'm not just talking about what the guy said or did, but also how people responded. And oftentimes, actually, there can be more than one kind of response. I gave you the general response. There were some people, to be fair, who basically tried to, like, after he tweeted his apology about not knowing, they tried to sort of steer the conversation into one of education. They were like, well, if this guy didn't know, then that should say something about sort of how he grew up, how we think about these things socially. If kids can just run around in Miami using words like that and have no idea that it means this, shouldn't we be talking about that? Now, what's interesting to me is those people either got ignored or shut down too. Um, I think there's an argument to be made about that. But again, when it comes to research, which is the first thing we're doing, I want to take us back to the prompt. When it comes to research for your bibs, those two articles I just talked about basically. So this one could be article 1. And then the mythical one that I did not have time to find, unfortunately, for today would be article 2, where we talk about that sort of response to this guy. Maybe I write a bib on each one of those, and that would be for the first due date for the 10th here. And then for next week, for the 15th, I'd find 2 more that maybe talked a little bit more about the response, like different kinds of responses people had, or this article mentioned at the end. I want to get to that ominous language. I want to get it right. Oh wait, sorry. You got to navigate ads. Here we go. Any further action? I would want to look that up. I'd be curious. Was there any further action taken? I'm sure the Buccaneers issued a statement, for instance. Was he suspended? Any other sort of fallout from this? That'd be worth looking into. That could potentially be another article. Anyway, so the other point I'm making here, I guess, is you can use information from the articles you do find and you do use to perform more research and see what else is out there. But those are your bibs. This is sort of the first real step in building this paper because you need information and arguments to engage with to build the paper. So focus on this for now. The other thing we can do, though, and I think it's over here. Yeah. Do the 3rd, which again, I'm bad at dates. Let's be clear here. So this Thursday, yes? Yes. Do this Thursday. Your pre-proposal. And I have, a little description here. But basically, you're going to have a proposal due next week, which I will look at and approve or tell you I need more information or you need to think about it more or something like that. Before that, here, this is super informal. This is a discussion board. This is you talking to your classmates. What are some ideas you have? Ideally, in me talking about the paper, in me talking about Carlton Davis, you've had some thoughts spring to mind. Oh, I remember when this person did this, or oh, this particular movement, I remember this thing happened. I wonder what people said about that. I don't remember. I want to go look that up. Something like that. Okay. My best advice for this pre-proposal, uh, cite a couple instances. Um, if you want to talk about Kanye West, because I always every semester I have students who do, and I totally understand why. Maybe that's one idea. What I'm telling you here is for this assignment, especially because it's informal, give yourself a couple options. There's two reasons for that. Number one, most of you, at least right now, aren't sure what you want to write about, which is totally fine. Give yourself those options. But number two, actually, the real reason I have you guys do this, you would be surprised how often someone will post a thing, use none of those ideas, and actually like think of something they totally forgot about based upon something else someone else says, if that makes sense. So like you may think you're going to write about Britney Spears, and her saga. Okay. But then after this discussion topic and you read other people's and you respond to them, all of a sudden you remember this thing somebody else did last year. And you're like, oh, I can't believe I totally didn't think about that. And all of a sudden that's what you do for your proposal next week, right? All of this going into the week we're in now is just thinking about the paper, really kind of getting that information under your belt and thinking deeply about whatever your source text is going to be. You have time to do it. Do not think you have to be married to whatever you come up with for this assignment, okay? Um, Now you're a little more married to this one, but again, it can change still even after this. But this is honestly meant as like a brainstorming exercise. So very little pressure. You're allowed to make mistakes or change your mind or whatever. Um, but I really want you, to the best of your ability, just trying to keep yourself sort of open minded when it comes to this, and just trying to figure it out. Talk to each other about your ideas. Um, that's the homework for this week. I don't believe we have anything else. Yeah, it's just discussion board post. Um, I'm gonna go. I gave you like a brief overview of research today, very brief. I'm gonna dive more into it next time in detail. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'll say again, if you want to go ahead and if you feel really good about whatever you want to write about, if you want to start on bibs or anything like that, there's nothing wrong with getting ahead. But again, we will actually talk about it in more detail next time. So look forward to that. Um, oh, and just to remind you here at the bottom, your Essay 1 revisions, if you choose to do that, are due the 4th. They're due this Friday. So again, today, this week is actually fairly light in terms of homework. That's to facilitate your revisions if you decide to do that. Yes, that's all I wanted to talk to you about. I know I yammered on a little bit, probably too long. I apologize for that. That's all I got. Hit me up if you have questions, or thoughts, concerns, ideas, anything like that. Otherwise, hope everyone's well, and I will talk to you in a couple days. Thanks.